千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Tzu. Let's take a look at line 13. I've highlighted two characters there, 不救. The translation, live without salvation all through life. So syntactically, the Chinese original is flipped for the translation. If you wanted to translate in the same syntax, same sequence, it would be all through life, comma, live without salvation. So the last two characters, 不救, will be live without salvation. So let me single out the last character there to talk about that. So pinyin spells it like J-I-U, and you probably will say, okay, that's Ju, but it's actually Jiu. So it sounds a little bit different than what the pinyin may suggest. Jiu means to rescue, to save, or to salvage. In this context, it's the passive tense, being saved. Now, this is not being saved by an external entity. Being saved, in this case, is being saved by yourself through foresight, through spiritual clarity and preventive measures. Therefore, if I put the negation character in front of it, the no character in front of it, no save, that just means beyond saving, beyond salvation, that is totally hopeless. Here, I want to be very careful to explain to everyone that when I use the word salvation, it is used simply as the dictionary definition, which means the preservation, saving, rescuing, or salvaging from harm, ruin, or loss. That's it. The dictionary's definition, I am not using this term in the Christian context. Living here in the West, this is a Judeo-Christian society. Usually when people talk about salvation, immediately there's going to be associations mentally thinking about, oh, Salvation Army, oh, the Christian term. That Christian term means deliverance from sin and its consequences brought about by faith in Christ. I think it won't surprise anyone when I say that, well, the ancient sages, the ancient students and teachers of the Tao, they didn't have these Christian concepts. They didn't have the original sin, the passing on. Man has fallen from the Garden of Eden, fell from grace, and therefore the original sin, redemption by faith in Christ, etc. None of that. This has nothing to do with any of that Christian theology, and I want to make sure that's abundantly clear to everybody. Not only today as we're connecting online, but also as this is recorded and make it into one of our YouTube video recordings. So the overall meaning is simple. When you stick to the dictionary definition, is that if you keep sabotaging yourself by talking too much when you shouldn't, by interfering with other people's business, the metaphor is rifling through somebody else's drawer, making that person very uncomfortable in the process, then you end up with negative situations that are basically hopeless. So this brings us to the last point here. If you cannot stop talking or meddling, you create a hopeless situation for yourself. And conversely, if you flip that around, you can also figure out that Lao Tzu is trying to say, hey, listen, you are the only one who can solve your own problems. And a great way to begin is to stop causing any more of your own problems. Hence, close the mouth, shut the door. So I think when you get to that idea, when you logically arrive at that chain of reasoning, you see that it makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, now let's bring in the whole line to talk about that. We can break it down character by character. And so, 终身, the first two characters, still means the same thing. It means when you reach the end of your life, which means your entire life, your lifetime. And then the last two characters, no salvation. So this is the opposite of 终身不勤, a life that is free of strife and struggles, hardship. Now, 终身不救, the life that you end up with when you cannot keep the mouth closed, when you cannot shut the door on temptation, and therefore meddle in the affairs of others, a life that you end up with that is hopeless, beyond salvation, it is contrary to the Tao. Such a life, mostly driven by ego, as you saw from the example, the eyes and ears, hearing flattery, seeing a situation that you then interfere with, ego-driven. It's oftentimes in the extremes, lacking in moderation. It's oftentimes full of anger and frustration, full of problems at every turn. You haven't even resolved one issue in such a life when another problem, another challenge, another setback occurs. And here, in this line, it basically says beyond salvation, beyond hope, beyond redemption. And of course, I am, since we just talked about how salvation is not the Christian terminology, redemption is also not, the crucifixion of Christ, redemption for mankind. This is completely different. This is completely in the secular sense. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.